Welcome to Night Stories from VHS Era. You've arrived at a place where the glow of old television screens, the hum of rewinding tapes, and the softness of forgotten childhood dreams come alive once more. Each night will take a quiet journey back in time to sleepy suburbs, moonlit driveways, warm summer breezes, and the kind of memories that feel just a little too magical to be real. Here you don't need to worry. Just press play and let the night unfold. Before we begin tonight's story, let's take a moment to slow down. Close your eyes. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Hold it gently. And now, exhale slowly through your mouth. Let the day melt away with that breath. Again, breathe in deeply. Feel your shoulders soften. Now, release and let go of everything you don't need to carry right now. Imagine you're lying on a cozy bed in your childhood room. Outside, the wind hums softly. The light from a small lamp glows like a warm memory, and the sound of a distant VHS tape spinning fills the air with comfort. You are safe. You are still. And the night is yours. Let's begin tonight's story.
Have you ever felt the thrill of getting ready for something simple that felt like everything? Do you remember laying out your clothes hours in advance, as if the night held promises only a child of the 90s could truly understand? Can you still smell the soft sweetness of your mom's hairspray, or the bold hit of your dad's cologne as you stood in front of the mirror, hoping to get everything just right? Stay with me until the end of this video, because tonight we're stepping back into a forgotten ritual. The magic of getting ready for a Friday night at the roller rink. By the time the music fades and the lights dim in your memory, you'll remember how even the smallest moments were packed with meaning. I can still feel the excitement pulsing in my chest, like the opening chords of a song you've waited all week to hear on the radio. Friday afternoons back then weren't just the end of the school week. They were the doorway to something extraordinary. The moment the final bell rang, we burst out of our classrooms like we were being released into another world, one where the night shimmered with fluorescent lights, disco balls, and endless loops around the rink. But before all that came, the preparation. And honestly, sometimes getting ready was just as good as the night itself. The sun would still be high when I got home. I'd drop my backpack in the hallway, kick off my sneakers, and run straight to the bathroom to claim the mirror before my siblings got there first. It was a sacred time, and I treated it like one. Do you remember that sense of urgency? Like if you didn't start early enough, you'd miss some invisible deadline that only kids understood? First came the clothes. I'd spend more time than I care to admit standing in front of my little wooden dresser, pulling out one shirt after another, trying to figure out which one felt like Friday night. It couldn't be the one I wore last week, obviously, and it had to be something that moved just right when I skated. I always ended up choosing something with a logo. Maybe Tommy Hilfiger or No Fear. Something bold but just enough. I wanted to stand out but not too much, you know, and the jeans. Oh, the jeans had to be the right kind of faded. Not the stiff ones your mom made you wear to church, but the soft ones, worn in from bike rides and backyard adventures. Sometimes I'd even iron them just a little, carefully, to get that crisp fold down the front that I thought made me look older. Did you ever do that too? Pretend you were older than you were just to feel the weight of the night a little more? Hair was next. For me, it meant spiking the front with LA Looks Gel, that electric blue bottle we all had somewhere in our bathroom. I'd scoop out a glob, work it into my hands, and then style my hair like I'd seen in a magazine. Never quite getting it perfect, but still feeling like $1,000,000. For the girls I knew, it was different. I can still picture my neighbor Katie in her room across the street, sitting on the floor in front of her mirror, twisting her hair into a side ponytail and clipping it with one of those oversized, colorful butterfly clips. Her lips would move with the words of whatever song was playing on her Walkman, and the smell of her Gap Dream body spray would drift through her open window, mixing with the scent of cut grass and the distant hum of someone mowing their lawn. Fragrance was the final touch, and it mattered more than I think I ever admitted. I'd steal a quick spritz from my dad's cologne, Drakkar Noir, always too strong, but somehow right. It made me feel taller, like I could walk into the rink and people would notice. My sister used Sunflowers by Elizabeth Arden, and the hallway always smelled like a meadow when she passed by in a rush. We didn't have the words for it then, but we were trying to impress each other, to fit into this unspoken rhythm of growing up that came disguised as a Friday night ritual. And do you remember the mirror checks? Standing in front of it, one last time before heading out, tilting your head left, then right, wondering if your look was too much or not enough. I always felt that nervous thrill, like the night held secrets it would only reveal once the rink lights came on and the DJ dropped the first beat. And if your best friend said you looked cool, that was it. You were set. You were ready. Dinner was usually quick because no one wanted to be late. I'd poke at my food, barely eating, too full of butterflies. Sometimes we'd beg for a ride, early just so we could be there when the doors opened. Watch the rink lights flicker on one by one like a stage preparing for something unforgettable. In those final moments at home, before the car ride, there was always this hushed excitement in the air. It was like Christmas Eve, but it happened every single Friday. Now thinking back, I realize we treated those nights like events not because someone told us to, but because we felt it in our bones. We didn't have smartphones or social media to broadcast ourselves to the world, so we lived entirely in that moment. Getting dressed, gelling our hair, choosing just the right song on a cassette to set the mood. It wasn't for likes or follows. It was just for us. By the time we were in the car, riding toward the rink with a mixtape playing softly in the background, something with TLC or maybe Boys II Men, we were already buzzing. The whole car seemed to glow. Our parents would smile, maybe say something like, "You guys are really excited, huh?" But they didn't fully get it. How could they? They'd had their time. This was ours, and maybe that's what I missed the most. Not just the roller rink itself, not even the music or the lights, but the getting ready. The sacred, silly, beautiful ritual of preparing for a night that felt bigger than life. The belief that something special was waiting, just around the corner, and all you had to do was put on the right shirt, style your hair just right, and show up. So when was the last time you got ready for something like it was everything? When did a simple night out feel like the most important event in your world? I think that's the part that stays with me. Not the skates, not even the crushes, but the transformation from ordinary kid to someone who believed, even if just for one night, that anything was possible. And maybe, just maybe, we need a little more of that again. By the time we pulled into the parking lot, the sky had shifted into that dreamy, in-between blue. Not quite night yet, but just dark enough for the neon to start glowing through the front glass of the rink. My heart always beat a little faster in that moment. You could see the lights flickering from the street, those soft pinks, greens, and electric blues dancing across the windows like a promise. It didn't matter how many times I had been there before. Walking into that rink felt brand new every single time. There was something about the way the doors whooshed open that made you feel like you were stepping out of real life and into something just a little bit magical. Do you remember how your ears would catch the faint echo of music before you were even all the way inside? It was always just a few notes, muffled and bouncing off the walls, but it gave you a jolt, like a secret invitation. And then, as soon as you crossed the threshold, the full sound would hit you, big, bold, and alive, echoing across that polished floor like it was wrapping itself around your whole body. The air inside was cool, touched with that unmistakable mix of floor wax, buttery popcorn, and something sweet like cotton candy. That smell lives somewhere in my memory, like a song you haven't heard in decades but still know all the words to. As we stepped in, the colors from the lights overhead painted our clothes in swirls of pink and purple. The disco ball at the center of the rink spun slowly, casting tiny flecks of silver on everything it touched. Did you ever feel like those little reflections were dancing just for you? I'd always stop right at the entrance to take it all in. The rows of lockers to the left, each painted in chipped red or blue. The rental counter with scuffed white skates lined up like soldiers waiting to be chosen, and the snack bar tucked into the far corner, its glowing menu board flickering with prices that somehow felt important. But the real magic, the heart of it all, was the rink itself. That floor. It was like a mirror under your feet, gleaming, smooth, just waiting to be marked by the first skate of the night. Every turn of the lights made it look different. One moment it shimmered gold, the next it glowed green, and right in the middle, the DJ booth stood raised like a lighthouse, surrounded by pulsing lights and guarded by speakers that seemed too big to be real. You could feel the bass in your chest, even from the entrance. It was like the night had a heartbeat, and it matched your own. I remember the feeling of my skates in hand, the stiff leather rubbing against my wrist as I carried them over to the benches. Sometimes they were mine, worn in and marked with stickers I had added over time. Other times I had to rent a pair, and the plastic tag with the number on it would dangle from the laces like a badge. Either way, I'd sit down and slide them on like I was preparing for flight. Tighten the laces, double knot them, stand up, wobble a bit, then take that first brave step onto the rink. Didn't it always feel like flying at first? The way your feet would glide across the floor, the soft hum of wheels underneath you, the lights spinning around in your peripheral vision. It was like nothing else in the world existed. Just the music, the motion, and the laughter echoing off the walls. Sometimes I'd go slow at first, just finding my rhythm, hugging the edge of the rink and nodding at the kids I recognized. Other times I'd jump right in, pushing off hard, letting the wind rush past my ears as I weaved around others like I knew exactly what I was doing. The first song of the night was always a big deal. It set the mood. If it was something fast, like Rhythm of the Night by Corona or Everybody Dance Now, then you knew it was going to be one of those nights, the kind where you didn't want to stop skating until the final lights flicked off. But sometimes they started soft with a slow jam or something from Boys II Men. That's when the couples would slowly drift onto the floor, hand in hand, while the rest of us watched and tried not to look like we cared. We always cared. There was a special electricity in the air in those first few minutes. Everyone was feeling each other out, seeing who showed up, who looked different, who brought a new haircut or a new jacket from the mall. It wasn't just about skating, it was about being seen. And not in a loud, attention-seeking way, but in that quiet, hopeful way where you just wanted someone to notice you existed. Do you remember the arcade machines lined up near the snack bar? Flashing and beeping, calling to anyone who needed a break from skating or just wanted to show off their skills. I'd always spare a few quarters for Street Fighter II or Time Crisis, and when the machines weren't calling, we'd hover by the DJ booth, hoping to catch the eye of whoever was spinning that night. Sometimes, if you were lucky, you could make a request, and if they actually played your song, that was everything. It wasn't just a place. The roller rink was a feeling. It was the soundtrack of our childhoods echoing in a room lit by neon and memories. Every kid, every teenager stepping through those doors carried a little story with them, a reason for being there. Maybe it was to skate. Maybe it was to escape. Maybe it was just to be close to someone, even if they didn't know it yet. That first moment, stepping onto that glowing floor, the way it shimmered and sparkled under your feet was pure magic. The music would rise, the lights would spin, and for a few precious hours, nothing else mattered. You weren't thinking about homework or chores or how awkward middle school could be. You were there. You were alive. And that floor, that light, that sound, it held you like a secret. And now, looking back, I understand why my heart always raced when I walked through those doors. It wasn't just excitement. It was hope. Hope that something beautiful would happen, that someone would smile your way, that your favorite song would play, that tonight would be just a little better than the last. It usually was. I remember sitting on that old wooden bench near the wall, the surface always a little sticky from spilled soda or the lingering sugar of someone's snow cone. I didn't care. My focus was entirely on the skates resting on the floor in front of me. They were rentals that night, like most nights. Heavy, a little scratched, the beige leather worn and soft in spots, stiff in others. The orange wheels looked like they had rolled across 1,000 Friday nights, and maybe they had. Still, they were mine, just for the evening, and there was something sacred about the ritual of lacing them up. Did you ever take a deep breath? Right before bending down to start tying your skates, like you were preparing for something big? I always did. Maybe it was the anticipation, or maybe it was the way the music swelled around me as I focused. I'd slide each foot in, adjusting the tongue of the skate just right, tugging on the laces slowly at first, then tighter, tighter, until the leather hugged my foot like a second skin. I'd double knot them without thinking, the way we all did, because there was nothing worse than stopping mid-glide to retie a loose lace. The truth is, they never fit perfectly. The rental skates were always either a bit too snug or a little too loose. Sometimes they rubbed at the heel, or the tongue dug into your ankle. But none of that mattered once you stood up and took those first few steps onto the rink. I can still remember the feeling of shifting my weight forward, feeling that tiny rock as the wheels started to roll. You'd wobble a bit at first, no matter how often you skated. That moment when the ground wasn't quite solid under you, it made your heart skip. But oh, the second you pushed off, it felt like flying. There was something about the sound of the wheels hitting the glossy floor that made everything else fade away. Not loud, but crisp. A rhythm you could fall into. The lights would catch in the polished surface, reflecting like streaks of color under your feet. As I started to skate, slowly at first, then with more confidence, I could feel the cool air rush past my face. I wasn't fast, not yet, but even gliding at a gentle pace made me feel like I had escaped something, like I had slipped out of the normal world and into a space made entirely of movement and light. Was it like that for you too? That moment when the music seemed to sync with your heartbeat, and every push forward felt like shedding a weight you didn't know you were carrying. That's what I remember most. Not the skates, not the tightness, not even the blisters the next day. I remember the freedom. I remember what it felt like to move with nothing holding me back, even if the skates pinched a little. Sometimes I'd close my eyes for just a second as I glided around the corner of the rink, trusting the motion, the rhythm, the muscle memory of looping that circle again and again. I'd hear the low hum of the crowd, the occasional screech of a fast turn, the burst of laughter from the far corner where the kids would gather and show off. But for a heartbeat or two, it was just me and the floor, me and the music. That kind of peace, that kind of effortless joy, is something you don't recognize as rare when you're a kid. You just feel it. You live in it. The skates didn't have to be perfect. The laces didn't have to be new. Even the fit didn't matter. The rink was a place where imperfections faded. You could come in carrying a bad grade, a fight with your sibling, or the weight of a tough week, and it would all slip away the moment you found your stride. I saw it in the faces of other kids too. That soft, faraway look they got when they were just skating, not trying to impress anyone, not thinking too hard, just being. That's the part I miss most, I think. The being. I remember skating. Past the rental counter and catching glimpses of the newcomers just arriving, still lacing up, faces lit with nervous energy. I'd nod at someone I knew, flash a grin, then push off again. If I was feeling brave, I'd weave between the others, not fast enough to draw attention, just enough to feel the air shift against my shoulders. The music played on, maybe a Janet Jackson hit or something from Ace of Base, and the beat gave me permission to move the way I wanted to move. There was no right or wrong, just motion. I never realized it at the time, but there was something powerful about those moments of movement. How often do we, even now, get the chance to move without purpose, without destination? That rink, that loop, those glowing lights on the floor, they created a space where we could just feel. That was enough. Eventually, I'd start picking up speed. My legs would ache a little, My shirt would cling to my back from the warmth of the room, and still I wouldn't want to stop. Not until the DJ called for a break or the lights dimmed for couples skate. Even then, I'd just circle slower, watching, waiting, breathing. Sometimes the toe stops on the skates made that rubbery squeak when you slowed down too hard. Sometimes you'd trip, slide a little, catch yourself on the wall. And sometimes, yeah, you'd fall. But no one laughed. Not really. We all knew the floor wasn't always kind, but it was forgiving. By the time I reached the center of the rink, where the disco ball turned slowly above me, the colored lights wrapping around the walls in smooth patterns, I realized I wasn't thinking about anything else. Not about how the skates fit, not about school, not about home. Just the smooth glide, the spin, the beat. My shoulders relaxed, my mind quieted, and all I could feel was the curve of the floor beneath me and the pulse of music surrounding everything. Funny, isn't it? How we can remember so clearly the feeling of moving freely, even years later. The way our bodies knew the rhythm before our minds caught up. The way a rented pair of skates, even ones a size too small, could become wings on a Friday night. We didn't need anything fancy, just the lights, the music, and that steady roll of wheels across the floor. That was enough to make us feel infinite, and maybe that's why we kept coming back. The moment the next song dropped through the speakers, I felt my chest swell with recognition. It was always like that. Just the first few seconds of a beat, the static, crisp transition between tracks, and suddenly your whole mood shifted. That night, I think it was Baby One More Time or maybe Genie in a Bottle. It's hard to remember exactly which song played first, because in my memory, they blend together like a mixtape you never wanted to end. Do you remember what it was like when the music changed everything? 1 second you were gliding along, mind, wandering, and the next, the beat would kick in and the entire atmosphere shifted. Skating in circles became dancing with wheels on your feet. The floor wasn't just a floor anymore. It was a stage, and we were all the stars of our own music video. Each song felt like it had been made just for us, for that night, for that loop around the rink. Every turn, every lean into the curve became choreographed even if we didn't mean it to be. I remember leaning forward just a little as the bass hit, pushing off harder with each stride, letting the music fuel me. There was something about skating to the rhythm of those 90s pop hits that made me feel like I belonged to something, like I was part of a story bigger than me. And maybe I was. Maybe we all were. Just a bunch of kids on rented skates, chasing the pulse of a decade that still feels like a dream when I close my eyes. Have you ever heard a song from that time and felt like it was written for you, like it knew everything you felt back then? The awkwardness, the hope, the aching sweetness of growing up. I think that's why those nights stay with me. Because even though we didn't know it at the time, we were skating in slow motion through some of the best parts of our lives. Each song brought something different. Backstreet Boys made you want to skate faster. Spice Girls gave you that energy to twirl and laugh with your friends. Savage Garden made you drift a little. Eyes lifted to the spinning lights above, thinking about someone who made your heart feel fuzzy. Sometimes a slow song would sneak in, something like I'll Be by Edwin McCain, and you'd slow your roll, maybe skate closer to someone you liked, pretending it was nothing when it felt like everything. We didn't just skate, we felt. That's what those pop hits did. They lit up the rink like lightning in our chests. Every loop around felt like a scene in a teen movie, the kind with low lighting, soft camera focus, and a perfect soundtrack. And maybe we didn't have scripts or camera crews, but the stories were still there. Whispers between songs, eyes, meeting across the rink, the thrill of skating just behind someone and hoping they'd turn around. Sometimes I'd close my eyes for a moment, just a second or two, trusting the rhythm and the flow of the circle. The lights danced across my eyelids, and the music wrapped around me like a warm jacket on a chilly night. And I would wonder, just for a breath, is this what freedom feels like? Skating in circles might sound repetitive, but when the music changed, so did the mood. One moment you were pushing fast, dodging the younger kids, laughing at nothing. The next, the lights dimmed and the tempo slowed, and suddenly you were floating. Each lap was a new verse, each turn a chorus. You could lose yourself out there. You wanted to. There was an art to it. You'd find your groove, sink your steps to the bass, let the melody guide you. And if you really paid attention, you'd see that everyone else was doing the same. We were like planets orbiting the center of the rink, pulled by an invisible force made of neon and melody. Every few laps, you'd pass by the same faces. Sometimes they smiled, sometimes they were deep in thought. But we were all moving, all part of something bigger than ourselves. I remember once skating beside a girl I barely knew. We weren't talking, just skating near each other for a song or two. But the music, something upbeat, probably Everybody, Backstreet's Back, had us both bobbing our heads at the exact same time. We caught each other's eyes and laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was real. It was connection, in its purest form, and we didn't need words. The song was enough. Isn't it wild how music can do that? Bring people together without saying anything at all? By the third or fourth song, your legs would be tired, but your heart wouldn't. Be ready to stop. You'd tell yourself, just one more lap, and then another, and another. You didn't want to miss your favorite song. You didn't want to miss the moment, the one where everything felt just right. And in the background, the DJ booth glowed. Sometimes he'd talk between songs, making announcements or giving shout-outs. His voice echoed through the rink, smooth and familiar, part of the soundtrack too. He was like the narrator of our Friday night fairy tale, and we trusted him to keep the music coming, to make us feel like stars, even just for a couple hours. It to you wasn't just about the skating, it was the way those songs lit up our emotions, the way every lyric felt like it was stitched into the story of who we were becoming. You didn't need to say, this song is about me, because everyone around you already understood we were all living those lyrics, all of us. When I think back to that endless loop circling to the beat of 90s pop hits, I don't remember the specifics of every song, every lap. What I remember is the feeling, the rush of belonging, the joy of movement, the soundtrack that never stopped playing in our heads, even long after the skates were unlaced. That music, that beat, became part of us. A rhythm that still echoes, quietly, every time we hear those old tracks playing in the car or at a grocery store. It brings back the smell of the rink, the sparkle of the lights, the smooth resistance of wheels on polished wood. So the next time you hear one of those songs and your foot starts tapping before you even realize it, just know, somewhere inside, your heart is still skating in circles, back in that glowing world of youth and pop and magic. We all are. It always started the same way. You'd be skating along, finding your rhythm, lost in the music, until your eyes landed on them. That one person who made your stomach flutter like a soda fizzed too much inside. Suddenly the floor felt slicker, your legs felt wobblier. And yet, somehow your entire being screamed, act normal. That was the most impossible part. Trying to stay upright while your heart pounded against your ribs like a bass drum. Trying to appear effortlessly cool when your balance was one bad turn away from disaster. But that was the magic of it. The risk, the illusion, the performance of confidence wrapped tightly around trembling knees and hopeful glances. I remember skating just a few feet behind him, the boy I couldn't stop thinking about, pretending. Like I was headed somewhere specific when, in truth, I was just looping endlessly, orbiting around the chance that our eyes might meet. He had no idea, I think. Or maybe he did and just played along. It didn't matter. What mattered was that whenever he glanced in my direction, I straightened my spine, tightened my core, and made sure my stride looked smoother than it actually felt. Every little stumble felt like a catastrophe. A tiny wobble became a full-blown crisis in my head. Please don't fall. Please don't fall. Not now. Not in front of him. The rink suddenly turned into a tightrope, and I became the performer walking the line between romance and humiliation. But there was something thrilling in that fear. Like that moment when you leaned into a curve a little too sharply just to speed up past him, pretending not to notice he was there. You weren't even sure what you were trying to prove, that you were cool, graceful, unbothered. It didn't matter. The goal was to be seen and not fall, at least not badly. And when you did trip, because eventually everyone did, you learned how to style it out. A flailing arm turned into a dramatic stretch. A near collision became a graceful spin. You laughed it off as if it was part of some grand routine you had planned all along. And sometimes, just sometimes, they'd smile, or laugh too, or skate past and say, "You good?" And in that moment, everything inside you wanted to explode into confetti. It was a strange kind of courage we discovered at that rink. The bravery it took to flirt while skating. To take a risk with your limbs and your feelings all at once. To hope someone noticed you even when you were pretending you didn't care. And the real kicker? Most of us were just as terrified as the person we were trying to impress. That made it beautiful. Sometimes you'd get lucky and skate side by side just for a few laps. Not saying much, not doing anything overt. Just being next to each other, matching speeds, letting the music carry the silence. That felt huge. Like the world had paused just for you two. You could feel the electricity in the air, even if you barely looked at each other. Even if your palms were sweating inside rental gloves, and your knees were one wrong push from buckling. There were also moments of comic failure. Like the time I tried to do that cute little spin move I'd seen older kids do, only to turn half a circle and land flat on my back. I lay there stunned, heart pounding in horror, staring up at the disco lights spinning lazily above. And then I heard him laugh. Not in a mean way, but in that surprised, joyful kind of laugh that makes you want to laugh too, even through your embarrassment. "You okay?" he asked, offering a hand I didn't expect. I took it, more grateful than I could express. And just like that, the fall turned into a moment. A memory I still hold on to more fondly than any smooth lap around the rink. Maybe because it was real. Maybe because it made him real too. Not some fantasy I was trying to impress, but a person who laughed, reached out, and saw me even in my clumsiest moment. After that, I didn't try so hard to be flawless. There was a kind of charm in imperfection, a kind of honesty in letting yourself be seen, not just when you're gliding gracefully, but when you're fumbling a little, trying your best, heart in your throat. Skating near someone you like was less about impressing and more about being present, being brave, being just awkward enough to be endearing. And isn't that what crushes were back then? Messy and thrilling, quietly monumental. A look, a laugh, a shared moment under swirling lights and music that said everything for you. You didn't need grand gestures, just the courage to keep skating near them, even when your ankles hurt and your pride felt bruised. We were all just trying to hold our balance, on wheels, in our feelings, in our teenage bodies that didn't yet know how to contain everything we felt. And even if nothing ever came of those silent skate floor crushes, they taught us something we didn't even realize at the time, that it was okay to feel big things, even in small moments. That vulnerability didn't always end in disaster. That falling wasn't the end of the world, and sometimes it could even be the start of something unforgettable. So we kept circling, skating past the people we liked, hoping they noticed, slowing down when they were near, speeding up when we felt shy, practicing the fine art of looking back without looking like we were looking. It was its own kind of dance, nervous, sweet, and oddly sacred. Years later, when those songs play and my feet still remember the rhythm, I don't just think of the lights or the floor or the old skates. I think of them. The crushes that made my legs feel like jelly and my heart race like I was in a dream I never wanted to end. And I smile, remembering what it was like to try so hard not to fall, not just physically, but emotionally, while still hoping that if I did, someone might be there to help me up. Eventually, the moment always came. The one when your legs felt like jelly from too many laps. Your ankles ached from the rental skates digging in, and the music that once made you soar now felt like background noise to a growing hunger. That's when the snack bar started calling. And somehow, it didn't matter if the food was lukewarm, overly salty, or questionably fresh. At that age, under those lights, it all tasted like magic. The snack bar wasn't just a place to eat. It was a sanctuary, a neon oasis where you could unlace your skates, drop into a hard plastic booth, and exhale a breath you hadn't realized you'd been holding. The floor was sticky, the tables wobbled, and the menu was printed on a glowing backlit panel that buzzed faintly overhead. But when you were handed a red plastic tray loaded with nachos drowning in fake cheese, a slice of pizza with grease dripping, onto a napkin, and a blue raspberry slushie that turned your tongue radioactive, it felt like you were being served a royal feast. There was always a moment of indecision at the counter. You'd scan the menu like it was your first time, even though you always got the same thing. Nachos were a no-brainer. Salty chips with bright yellow cheese that congealed too fast under the cold Rink air, but still tasted perfect in every bite. The slushie came next. A painfully cold, vividly colored sugar blast that made your teeth hurt and your brain freeze, but was completely worth it. And of course the pizza, soft, a little rubbery, and somehow still one of the best things you'd ever eaten in that moment. It had a flavor that only existed in roller rinks, bowling alleys, and school carnivals. The taste of artificial perfection, eating in your socked feet, with your skates piled beside you and the sound of skaters still echoing just beyond. The plexiglass made it feel like you were in a different world. This was the halfway point in the night. A breath, a break, a chance to catch up with your friends and recap everything. Who fell? Who danced to that one Backstreet Boys song? Who nearly bumped into who? And most importantly, who was crushing on who? That last one always lit up the table. Laughter and whispered teasing ricocheting between bites of food and sips of slush. Your friends would lean in, faces flushed from skating and excitement, napkins tucked under elbows, grease stains on sleeves, and talk in fast bursts like every second was too precious to waste. Someone would accidentally drop a nacho, and it would start a food fight. Someone else would pretend to choke on a gummy worm. And amid all the chaos, you'd realize this was part of the magic. The rink wasn't just the floor and the lights. It was this too, the community, the pause between motion, the laughter over cheap snacks that tasted like memories being made in real time. The tables were always too small for how many of us tried to squeeze in. Legs overlapped under the bench seats, and trays jostled for space on the laminated surface. But no one complained. It was warm here, in every sense of the word. The buzz of vending machines hummed behind us. The scent of melted cheese and sugared ice mixed strangely with the waxy smell of the rink. Overhead, a scratched-up television played music videos that no one was watching, but everyone somehow absorbed anyway. And sometimes, if you were lucky, the person you'd been skating near showed up too. Maybe they sat across the room, maybe at the next table over. You'd pretend not to look. Or maybe you'd catch them looking back. And in that shared, quiet glance between bites of pizza or sips of slush, something unspoken passed through the air like a spark. It made the cheese melt better. The soda, fizz stronger, the moment heavier, even though no words were exchanged. It was everything and nothing all at once. I remember how we used to trade bites like it was some ancient ritual. Someone would offer a nacho loaded with extra cheese, another would pass a corner of their pizza, and a brave few would attempt the ultimate dare, mix all the slushy flavors into one cup and drink it without grimacing. That was the stuff of legends. The kind of act that earned you a story for next time, even if it left your tongue stained green and your stomach a little too full. The snack bar also offered the kind of stillness that made you notice more. The way your socks slid on the linoleum. The way your hands smelled faintly like nachos even after wiping them clean. The way your body slowly cooled down from all that skating. Your shirt clinging a little with sweat. Your cheeks tingling with leftover adrenaline. And it was in that slowed down moment that you'd realize how happy you were. How simple it all was. How complete. Sometimes we lingered too long, lost in laughter or gossip or just enjoying the sugary haze. And then we'd hear the DJ's voice overhead, announcing a couple's skate or a backward race, and a jolt would run through the group. Crushed cups were thrown away, crumpled napkins piled high, skates were relaced, often too tight in the rush, and everyone sprinted back toward the rink, fueled by pizza grease and childhood joy. But that pause, that moment of sitting around with friends, shoes off, stomach full, cheeks sore from smiling, it stayed with you. It carved itself into your memory with the same weight as the lights or the music or the crushes. Because what we were really consuming wasn't just food. It was togetherness, safety, innocence. A version of happiness that didn't need to be explained or justified. Every bite of those nachos, every slurp of that slushie, tasted like freedom. And to this day, even though I've had gourmet pizza, in candlelit restaurants and slushies from fancy summer cafes, nothing compares to that Rink food. Nothing feels quite as delicious as the moment you sat down, tray in hand, heart still racing from the floor, surrounded by people who mattered, more than anything else in the world. Those greasy, neon-lit meals were the taste of joy itself. There was a moment every night that made your pulse quicken for a different reason. Not from the speed of skating, not from laughter or near falls or nachos piled too high. No, this was something quieter, something heavier. It started with the shift in music. A slow fade out from an energetic 90s hit, a sudden dimming of the lights, and then the unmistakable first notes of a slow skate song echoing through the rink like a signal from another world. Everything changed in that instant. Disco ball began to spin a little more slowly, casting scattered fragments of soft white light across the glossy floor. The neon strobes faded into a gentler glow, and the DJ's voice would crackle through the speakers with a half-teasing, half-serious announcement. All right, folks, you know what time it is. Time to grab that special someone. And suddenly, all the noise wasn't from skates or music or laughter. It was from hearts pounding in unison. Nervous glances darted across the room. Conversations abruptly paused, and for a brief, awkward second, time stood completely still. This was the moment you had either been waiting for or dreading. You could feel it in your stomach, that fluttery, uncertain feeling that was more intense than any sugar rush or skating thrill. It was the moment that made you hyper-aware of your limbs, your hair, your shirt, your breath. Some kids bolted toward the bathroom as if choreographed. Others suddenly became deeply fascinated with their shoelaces or the vending machines or absolutely anything else that wasn't eye contact. But there were always a few, the brave, the lucky, or the ones just desperate enough to risk it, who began to drift toward each other like magnets pulled by invisible teenage gravity. And if you were one of those kids who got asked, or who worked up the courage to ask, the world took on a different kind of magic. The slow skate was its own kind of ritual. You didn't need to be a good skater. You just needed to glide, gently, together. Sometimes hand in hand. Sometimes side by side, barely touching. Sometimes in silence. Sometimes with nervous giggles and whispered words you'd barely remember later. But always with hearts beating so loudly, you could swear they echoed louder than the music itself. The songs were always classics. Something soft, romantic, and just cheesy enough to be unforgettable. I'll Be by Edwin McCain. All My Life by Kasai and JoJo. Maybe My Heart Will Go On. Or even I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith. Played with full drama as if everyone out there was starring in their own personal love story. And in some ways we were. There was no escaping the weight of those songs. If you skated alone, you felt the ache of every lyric like it was aimed right at you. If you watched from the snack bar or the benches, you did it half hoping and half dreading. Someone might tap your shoulder and say, "Want to skate with me?" And if you were already out there, partnered up with someone, even if it was just a friend pretending not to blush, you could feel the electricity in the air, the way every movement seemed to matter just a little more than usual. It was sweet and scary and awkward and perfect. Sometimes you ended up skating with your crush, and your palms would sweat so much you were afraid they'd notice. You'd both pretend not to be nervous, failing spectacularly, holding hands with fingers barely touching, giggling at nothing just to fill the silence. Other times, someone would ask you unexpectedly, and even if they weren't your crush, you'd say yes just to feel what it was like. The closeness, the connection, the quiet thrill of being chosen. And then there were the nights you didn't skate at all. The nights you sat out and watched everyone else circle slowly, gently, like satellites in a quiet orbit. The lights would twinkle on their hair and reflect in their eyes, and you'd think about what it meant to be seen, to be wanted. You'd chew on the straw of your finished slushie, knees pulled up, pretending not to care. But inside, you cared. Everyone did. Because those slow songs had a way of digging under your skin and reminding you that even in a place built for fun and chaos and laughter, there was space for something tender, something real. And yet, it wasn't just about romance. It was about vulnerability. The courage it took to extend a hand, the strength it took to accept it, the strange, sweet bravery of two kids, awkward and unsure, choosing to move forward together, even if only for one song. Because under those spinning lights, no one was cool. No one had it figured out. We were all just hoping not to trip on our own skates or on our own feelings. Sometimes, when the song ended and the lights returned to full neon brightness, you felt changed, even if nothing had really happened, even if your hands had only brushed for a second, even if you hadn't skated at all. The slow skate left a mark, soft and small, but impossible to forget. It reminded you that being young wasn't just about fun. It was about feeling everything, all at once. Years later, when one of those songs came on the radio, you'd freeze for just a second. You'd see the lights again, hear the low buzz of the Rink speakers, feel the weight of someone's hand in yours or the empty space beside you. You'd remember the way the floor shimmered, the way your heart jumped, and you'd smile, just a little, at how those slow songs made everything feel more important than it really was. Or maybe you'd realize it was that important after all. Tucked into the far corner of the rink, away from the chaos of the skating floor and the echoing thump of the speakers, was a little neon-lit sanctuary of its own. The arcade. Even before you reached it, you could hear it calling. A symphony of clinks, digital jingles, and the sharp robotic voices of old machines trying to grab your attention. It was always a little darker over there, like a secret world hidden in plain sight, where time slowed down and quarters transformed into adrenaline. The moment you crossed that invisible threshold between skates and screens, the energy changed. Suddenly, it wasn't about balance or rhythm anymore. It was about reflexes, instinct, and the sweet, intoxicating chase of the high score. The carpet was always stickier in that section, probably from spilled soda and slushies over the years, but no one cared. The glow of the machines pulled you in like moths to pixelated flames. There were always a few people already stationed at the best games, their eyes locked, hands a blur, faces bathed in flashing color. You had your favorites. Everyone did. For some, it was Pac-Man, the eternal chase through glowing mazes, each dot devoured like a heartbeat. For others, it was the chaos of Street Fighter, fingers flying across worn buttons, shouting triumphantly when Chun-Li unleashed her kick combo. And then there was pinball, that hypnotic hybrid of chaos and control, lights pulsing with every ricochet, the heavy clunk of the machine body shaking with each bonus hit. It always felt like the arcade wasn't just part of the rink. It was its own ecosystem, ruled by speed, skill, and the eternal promise of your name blinking at the top of a high-score list. In between laps on the skating floor, you'd peel off your skates or just walk awkwardly in them straight into the arcade. Sweaty and laughing, pockets jingling with change, you'd form little teams, cheering each other on, elbows nudging as you waited your turn. Some games felt like competition, others like pure bonding. One of the oldest machines in the corner was broken more often than not, but even that had become a kind of tradition, trying it anyway, banging the side gently, then shrugging and moving on. Time passed differently in that corner. You could spend what felt like 5 minutes and realize an hour had vanished. There was something addicting about the chase, the way you'd almost beat your old score and then lose at the last second, prompting a loud groan and a breathless, "One more try." The machines blinked and beeped like they knew you personally, like they remembered every coin, every combo, every loss that stung just enough to make you come back for more. And when you finally did beat your best, when your initials climbed to the top and blinked triumphantly above the screen, you felt like royalty. But it wasn't just the games. It was the conversations whispered between turns, the trash talk. Among friends, the shy smiles exchanged over the hum of the Galaga soundtrack. Sometimes your crush would wander over to play Dance Dance Revolution, and you'd pretend to be focused on Donkey Kong while sneaking glances, your heart pounding, harder than any game's background music. Other times, a stranger would hand you their last token with a knowing nod, and it felt like a sacred act of generosity, like passing a torch of digital glory. The arcade also had this gritty charm, the smell of warm plastic and soda syrup, the hum of too many machines packed too close, the faded carpet with fluorescent shapes that looked straight out of a time warp. It was loud, always loud, but it was a comforting kind of noise, like the heartbeat of childhood itself, a rhythm made of missed jumps, flashing game over screens, and the steady click of quarters falling into metal slots. You'd leave, with sticky fingers, maybe a new blister from gripping the joystick too hard, and a slight daze from staring at blinking screens for too long. But it was always worth it. Because that corner of the rink wasn't just about games. It was a place where friendships deepened, rivalries ignited, and memories were locked in place like scores etched into pixelated gold. And somehow when you returned to the rink floor, after one of those marathon gaming sessions, everything felt a little brighter, the music louder, the wind cooler on your face as you picked up speed again. Maybe it was the rush of winning, or maybe it was just knowing that between every lap and every laugh, there was always a place to return to, a glowing haven that didn't care how fast you skated or who you danced with, only how many points you could rack up before the screen went dark. Just past the arcade and nestled between the snack bar and the vending machines stood a slightly battered but eternally popular photo booth. Its red curtain was faded, the black vinyl seat cracked in places, and the instructions printed above. The coin slot were smudged from years of greasy fingers. But none of that mattered. It wasn't about aesthetics. It was about the magic it created in 4 fast flashes. It was a rite of passage, a place where memories were captured, one silly pose at a time. The line always formed naturally, no one officially organizing it, just a shared understanding that the booth was sacred territory. You'd wait with a buzzing excitement, crammed, beside your best friends, trying to plan poses while pretending not to care if your hair was a mess or your shirt was riding up. Someone always brought props. A goofy pair of sunglasses, a backwards cap, a glittery plastic crown that had probably been stolen from a birthday party months ago. And when it was finally your turn, the energy inside that tiny booth turned electric. 4 friends packed into a space meant for 2. Knees on knees, elbows poking ribs, everyone shouting, "Ready? Ready? Go!" As the countdown began on the little blinking screen, the flash exploded once, and someone screamed. Second flash, everyone was already laughing too hard to pose properly. By the third, someone was making a ridiculous face on purpose, and by the fourth, someone else had fallen halfway off the seat, out of frame entirely. And then, silence. The mechanical whir of the printer kicking into life, the strip sliding out a few seconds later like a precious artifact. You never looked at it alone. The strip was passed around like treasure, everyone pointing and shrieking, "Look at your face," or "I blinked," or "This one's going on the fridge." There were always duplicates to be made, but sometimes there weren't enough. Coins left, so one person would claim the original and promise to photocopy it for the rest. Whether that ever actually happened didn't matter. What mattered was that the memory had been made. Each strip became a capsule of the night, raw, funny, chaotic. Some were carefully stored in the back pocket of a notebook, folded just so. Others were slipped inside locker doors, where they'd curl at the edges but never lose their magic. Some made it into scrapbooks, taped with colorful stickers and scribbled captions. And a few, the ones that meant the most, were hidden in shoeboxes beneath beds, safe from parents' eyes and siblings' snooping fingers, protected like sacred relics of youth. Occasionally, someone would sneak in with their crush, 2 people alone in that booth pretending they were just being goofy. But everyone knew. The nervous laughter, the overly casual poses, the sudden hush outside the curtain. It was all part of the ritual. Later, you'd see one of those photos taped inside a locker, heart drawn around it in pen, initials scrawled underneath in bold letters. The photo booth didn't care who you were outside. The awkward kid, the class clown, the quiet one who rarely talked. Inside, you were part of something. A freeze frame of fun, arms tangled around shoulders, noses scrunched in mid-laugh, everyone looking a little wild and a lot happy. The booth didn't capture perfection. It captured truth. The exact kind of truth that couldn't be staged or filtered. Long after the rink closed, those photo strips lived on. They'd resurface years later, tucked between pages of an old journal or at the bottom of a moving box, still smelling faintly of soda syrup and cotton candy. And when you held them again, now older, changed, maybe even jaded, you'd feel that old joy pulse through your fingertips like a secret handshake from your past self. You'd remember that moment, that laugh, that flash, that feeling of belonging. And suddenly, you'd realize something simple and beautiful, that no one really ages inside a photo booth. The world outside might spin and pull and grow complicated, but inside those 4 frames, captured in black and white or oversaturated color, time stood still, forever frozen in friendship, silliness, and the purest kind of happiness. The night had begun with such anticipation, the buzz of neon lights, the steady rhythm of pop songs pulsing through the rink's speakers, the familiar clatter of skates laced and tightened. But as the hours stretched on, the magic started to settle into a softer, quieter place inside me. It was time to leave. Time to say goodbye to the bright colors and the thumping music and the whirl of laughter that still echoed faintly in my ears. My feet were sore, achy from hours of skating in shoes that were never truly made for comfort. The rental skates had pinched and rubbed against my heels, and yet the sting was a small price for the freedom I'd felt gliding across the smooth floor, chasing the beat and the breeze. My legs were tired in a way that felt good, that satisfied kind of exhaustion you get only when you've truly lived through something special. I remember the way the cool night air felt when I finally stepped outside, the sudden quiet after, the riot of sound inside the rink. The moon was soft, and the streetlights cast pools of gentle orange on the pavement. My hair still smelled faintly of the rink, a strange but comforting mix of popcorn, leather, and a hint of old wax. I reached up and breathed it in, like a secret perfume from that night. Walking home, every step was a reminder of everything I'd experienced just hours before. The nervous excitement of trying to impress that crush, the warmth of friends' laughter as we gathered around the photo booth, the sticky sweetness of slushies melting too quickly in my hand, and the slow, hopeful moments during the romantic, slow skate songs when time seemed to hold its breath. I asked myself then, did I really want the night to end? Wasn't there a way to bottle that feeling and carry it inside me forever? And maybe that was the beauty of it. The night didn't have to last forever because its memory was endless. The ache in my feet, the tiredness in my legs, they were small reminders of a bigger joy, of a night where I felt free, alive, connected. The walk home was quiet, peaceful in a way the noisy rink never was. I thought about the conversations we had, the silly jokes, the moments of awkwardness and triumph. I thought about how the ordinary magic of a Friday night could transform into something unforgettable, simply because it was shared with people who mattered. The rink was more than a place. It was a world where the music, the lights, and the thrill of skating blended together to create a feeling that, even now, makes me smile. Sometimes when the days are long and the world feels heavy, I close my eyes and picture that night again. The way the neon lights danced, the rhythm of the music syncing with my heartbeat, the laughter floating in the air like confetti. I remember the freedom of those skates beneath my feet, the promise in every circle around the rink. Did I ever find a place like that again? Not quite. But maybe that's the point. Some nights are meant to be treasured memories, held gently and revisited whenever you need a little light. I'm grateful for that Friday night, for the way it made me feel young and bold and completely, wonderfully alive. And so, as I slip off my shoes and sink into bed, the soreness in my feet is a quiet reminder of a full heart, of a night spent, skating through neon dreams, where every moment was a gift, every laugh a spark of joy, and every memory a star shining softly in the dark.